G'day YouTubers, and welcome to episode 4 of the North of Moreton series. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to finish the marks in this episode or whether it's going to go another episode. I'm recording this before I start editing, so we'll see how it goes. I'll just say up front that all of these marks here that we're looking at are north of Flinders Reef, and I didn't get up to fish north of Flinders Reef very much. I usually found somewhere south of Flinders Reef or around Flinders Reef to fish at back in the day. But I've no doubt that these are good starter marks to have a look around and find where the fish are holding, and I'll go into detail of why that is later in the video. We've had a look at the first 7 marks now, and before we go any further, I'll just composite a Navionics map in under those marks so that you can see where they are in relation to the structure. As you can see, they're all very close to structure or on the structure. You don't have to be actually on the structure all the time. Sometimes the fish are holding a little bit off. It depends on the flow of the current, tide, maybe the mood of the fish. But don't just look on the structure itself. Have a look on the edge of the structure and a little bit away from it as well. There's no point going too far away from it. As I've said, on the shallower reefs in Moreton Bay, you'll often find the fish are a little bit away from the start of the reef. The larger fish, that is. The smaller fish are up on the reef. The larger fish tend to hold on the edge of the reef. I guess that's where they find most of their food. I can't see any other good reason for them to stay there. And after all, the law of the sea is eat or be eaten. I'll just put a little bit of music on in the background and let these next few marks play through by themselves, and then I'll show you the provenance for them and talk about that. As you can see, that last lot of marks is also on the edge of the structure. What I would like you to notice is that there is a lot of structure there without marks on it. That doesn't mean the fish aren't there, it just means that no one's published a mark on that particular piece of structure. So like every other mark I've given you, regard them as starter marks. They're a mark where you can go and find some structure or something, and you can start looking around from there to find out where the fish are holding. If you go and throw an anchor down at the mark, you might get a fish. But if you use the mark as a starting point and start searching for fish on your sounder, you will get a fish. Or at least you should. And the final 3 marks right up on the north end of Hutchison Shoal. I'll just let them play through as well. A little bit of music in the background. And once more, the provenance for those 3 marks, again on the edge of structure. Heaps and heaps and heaps of structure up there. Really, you can't go up into that area and not find structure. If you can't find structure up there, your sounder's broken. The last mark in this group is the wreck mark that I haven't mentioned yet. And the reason for that is it's the wreck of the Atlantic. That was a small steel motor launch about 23 metres long. It was sunk there in July of 1939, and the boat used to be a minesweeper, but it was in private use by the time it sank. The reason I left it till last is that we don't have an accurate latitude and longitude for it, but I do have 2 marks for it, and you'll see both marks up on the screen. I suspect that the northern one is the most accurate, although the document that I got that off did say that they're not releasing the GPS marks. They had found this boat. Apparently some divers had found the boat, but they weren't prepared to release the GPS marks. I guess they wanted to keep it to themselves. They also set us down in a canyon, and very difficult to find on a sounder. But a wreck down in a canyon sounds like a great place to fish to me, so for what it's worth, it's there. It's maybe around the southern mark. I suspect it'll be around the northern mark. They have said it's very hard to find, but if you're in the area, it wouldn't hurt to have a look and see if you can find it. Even if you don't find the wreck, if you find the canyon, that's probably worth a fish anyway. I think the word they used might have been a gully, but anyway, doesn't matter, it's down in the hollow. And just as a side note, the report of the Maritime Board of Inquiry on the shipwreck makes interesting reading. It just goes to show how widely recollections can vary when there's been some sort of incident. That's basically why they have the Maritime Boards of Inquiry, I guess, to try and figure out exactly what did happen, as opposed to what everyone thinks happened. This image gives an overview of the bathymetry of the area. You'll see Flinders Reef has that green blob that's somewhere between a quarter and a third of the way up from the bottom of the screen, and all that wonderful structure on the bottom that runs in a roughly north-south line through Flinders Reef. This is that same area, but a much larger image of it. I'll just play a bit of music in the background and let that scroll through so you can get a look at it. It shows the structure around Flinders and Henderson's, but also there's some structure further out, so it just might give you an idea where else to look around that area. There's a couple more marks in this area that are worth a look if you haven't found any on any of the other marks. Come out and have a look at these ones. At the very least, it might get you away from the crowd. Although back when I was fishing this area, and I didn't get up north of Flinders much, could be quite a few boats around Flinders itself. Not so many at Roberts, and going further north, there wasn't all that many boats out there the few times I went up there. There's also a couple of fads in the area, and the marks for them are going up on the screen now. Fads are always worth a look when you're in the area to see what's around. You can often find the pelagic fish hanging around them, and sometimes there's some fish on the bottom as well. But generally when I go to the fads, I'm after the pelagics up in the water column. Now just starting off with the wreck of the Marina, and that is a very sorry tale, this vessel. It ended up foundering off Cape Moreton in its current position on the 10th of June 1860. But it had a tale of woe long before that. It had run aground, been abandoned, been found floating by the crew of another ship that had been wrecked, and they were in their lifeboats, and they found it floating abandoned, sort of shades of the Mary Celeste, and they took it over and did some repairs, sailed it into Melbourne, I think it was. The crew that sailed it in, of course, got a salvage fee for that. It was repaired further, but anyway, it was sold at auction, I believe the story goes, only to sink again up at Cape Moreton. So that was a very sorry and ill-fated boat. It was a British bark of about 40 metres long. Given the fact that it's a wooden bark and it sank in 1860, I doubt very much there's anything left now. Or to be more accurate, I doubt that there's enough left to see on a sounder. A diver might find bits of the shipwreck, but I doubt that you'll find anything on the sounder to indicate that there's a ship on the bottom. Nevertheless, I had to throw in that bit of history because it is fascinating. Actually, the first 3 marks that I've got to show you from this group are all supposed to be wrecks, but the only one I have any information on is the Marina. The other 2, I don't know. I had a search on one, it's called the Dredge D, but I couldn't find any information on it, nor could I find any wreck in that general location. So I'm not saying it's not there, just that I haven't been able to find the information on it, so do with that what you will. Shipwreck coordinates are notoriously unreliable unless someone has actually found it by diving on it or located it on a GPS and taken a mark from it. The other wreck is just unidentified. That's the only information I have on it, unidentified wreck. So again, wasn't able to find anything. I'll just let the rest of the marks play through so you can copy them down. And since this is the last episode in the series on North of Moreton, I just want to show you this area that I've been talking about. The reef runs all the way from Shallow Tempest in the south up to Hutchison Shoal in the north. It is patchy in places, but you can see that north-south line of reef running all that distance. It doesn't matter how many boats are out on the water, there's heaps of area for you to look for fish. You just need to learn to use your sounder and look for your own marks in where you know the structure. And that's the key point, finding the structure. Once you know the structure, you can check it for fish. If there's none there, go to the next piece of structure. But having marks that you can go to and fish is a fallacy. In 99% of the cases, there are a couple of places where you can nearly always catch a fish. But in general, you get a mark for an area and you have to look around to find the fish. And as you can see, this is a huge area to look for fish. I've got a much larger image of this area from Shallow Tempest in the south up through to Hutchison's in the north, and I'm just going to let that scroll through with some background music so you can see all of the structure that's there. It is an amazing amount of structure there. And while I do see the odd boat fishing unusual places when I'm out in the water, the majority of boats seem to concentrate on an area where there's public marks and don't seem to look any further afield. But there is a lot of areas where you can fish productively out there. You just got to find them. From this you can see that whole line, zigzag along that whole line, you've got to find some fish somewhere. I'll let it play through with some background music for the rest of it. And that's it. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. I hope you've enjoyed the series and got some good marks out of it where you can catch some fish. I might be a little bit slow getting videos out for the next few weeks, maybe month of January, for a couple of reasons. One, I'm trying to get a new release of fish tracks out, which allows us to share images of catches and catch reports and things like that. And the other is that I now have my bait set up to show you guys where the structure is, what to expect from it, give you some really good bathymetry, and that'll eventually go into fish tracks, but that's a bit further down the track. But I do want to get out and make some videos using this facility and get them up as well, so that's going to eat into a little bit of time. And given the amount of work that has to go into those videos, it might slow video production down a little bit, but I think you'll find it well and truly worthwhile. So anyway, once again, thank you for watching the series. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be doing another series in the future, but a lot of things happening at the moment. I need to concentrate on a few other things. You'll see the benefits of them over the next month or so, I hope. Until then, good fishing.